Well, hello everyone. We're on the last day of the CAS Virtual Showcase and the last event. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you today to this session, which is entitled Supporting Learners with SEND Through a Blended Learning Approach. And we are delighted to welcome our guest today, the fantastic Catherine Elliott, who I will introduce very shortly. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Tim Wilson. I'm the Community Outreach Manager for the Midlands for CAS and today's host for the session. We are also joined by Pete Marshman, my colleague, also a Community Outreach Manager for CAS, who is the moderator for today's session and will be keeping an eye out in the questions window for all your questions and your comments. But just before we kick off, just a couple of things to share, the usual housekeeping rules. During the session, as already mentioned, we have a questions window. You will see it in the tab on the right-hand side of your screen. This is your window to ask questions and leave comments. And please do, the top of the window, you'll see a little orange rectangle there. This can be expanded or collapsed. So if you don't want to be utilizing the dashboard, that's a handy way of minimizing everything. As I say, Pete will be taking a note of questions and queries, and as time allows at the end, we will ask these questions, unless there's something urgent, in which case Pete might come back on screen and ask Catherine directly. Catherine will also be asking you questions during this session, so please, again, utilize the questions window to comment and to ask questions. So for those of you who are social media people, use the hashtag CASVirtual21. Please tweet, retweet, post, repost, share, comment, whatever your flavor of social media is. And all attendees, as I say, are in listen only mode, so we can't hear you. So the only way we can hear you is if you comment to us, so please do. So on to our guest today, our final guest, Catherine Elliott. So Catherine is the SEND lead for the Sheffield e-learning service. Catherine has spent a number of years working on ways to make computing accessible to all learners. Excuse the noise outside. We were just talking about noise outside. So I'll start that again. Catherine is the SEND lead for the Sheffield e-learning service and has spent a number of years working on ways to make computing accessible for all learners. Catherine is a member of the CAS Include working group and is a leader of the CAS Virtual SEND community, as well as the Sheffield and South Yorkshire secondary CAS communities. Catherine truly is one of the leading champions of SEND in computing, and it's a pleasure to welcome her today to our last event. So without further ado, Catherine, it's all yours.
Well, thank you for the lovely introduction. And it occurred to me today that actually a lot of what I'm going to talk about isn't computing specific. It's actually, generally how we can do some teaching and learning with technology for all our pupils. But we'll see if we've got some computing specific examples in there. But it's suitable for everybody, whether you're in primary, in secondary, in special schools. And without further ado, I'll begin. So I'm Catherine Elliott on Twitter if you want to include me in any tweets today. And the slides, I believe, will be made available to you at the end because there's lots and lots of links in there. So I'm conscious, you'll have access to those. So off we go. So really what I wanted to do today was just share some simple ideas to support learners with special educational needs and disabilities through a blended learning approach and raise awareness of some simple accessibility tools that are built into mainstream applications. And I know there was a session previously on some of this, so there might be a little bit of repeated content, but hopefully it will still be relevant to you and you'll learn at least one new thing that you can go and put into practice tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow because it's Saturday, Monday. So blended learning, well, what is it? And it probably means different things to different people, but essentially it's this blend of the face-to-face teaching and online instruction. And for me, the second part of this sentence really is the most important one, is how do we combine the strengths of both of these things to make it more meaningful for all of our learners and more inclusive? And online instruction, it can be done quite poorly, it can be done very well, but how do we build that into what we're doing face to face. And I think you'll all agree that in the last year and however many months, we've all moved on tremendously in our online instruction ability, in what we can do. And we've all learned a huge amount. And hopefully, you know, the people on this webinar today, you know, you're going to be fairly tech savvy or into computing, into technology. But actually, there's still things that, you know, we've all done. I mean, you know, this is the first year I've delivered conference workshops virtually, sat in my own home, saves a lot of traveling around the country. So the first question I have for you, just have a little think about, get us warmed up, is what are you going to keep from this period? So hopefully, you know, we'll be going more back to normal, but this doesn't mean we should forget everything that we've learned. So think about the things that you, the parents of the children you teach and the children themselves, the learners, what can you and they do now that you couldn't do before, that's really positive and really worthwhile? So what are the things you'd like to keep from remote learning, from home learning? So Pete, let me know if anything turns up. I'm not sure if I can see it myself.
Will do. Not got anything so far, Catherine.
No. I'm hoping there's at least one thing that you couldn't do before. I know a lot of people have talked about the fact that parental engagement, you know, has really shot up during this time because it's much easier to contact parents through a learning platform or via, you know, quick email or things like that. And it actually saves time rather than standing at the gate at the end of the day. So what I'll do is
I've just got a note. I've got a couple of things come in. So I've got SLT have agreed using pre-recorded videos is acceptable. I've got my daughter is much better at researching information for themselves online, and SLT have agreed, there's more coming in. SLT have agreed that homework in classwork should also be available online. I'll read one more out for you. Ability to engage with students having to isolate and allow them to remotely take part in live classroom lessons. So some similar themes there, but some maybe some things you can reflect on for us.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, all of these things are really important, and it's really good, I think, ourselves to reflect on how we've developed our own skills as well, because, you know, it's been a time of huge change, but it's been really beneficial for a lot of people. And I think what's quite interesting as well is anecdotally, I've heard a lot of evidence that many young people with additional needs, with disabilities, with learning difficulties, have actually found this period beneficial in certain ways. So learning at home actually has had some positives, and I think it's really important to hold on to that, because I know there has been, you know, there's still a big divide, a digital divide, but also a divide with how learners are accessing work, but there have been positives. So from what talking to other teachers and parents and young people as well, a lot of young people have found actually the pace has been better because they can access videos at home that they can pause and reflect on it and rewind and go back and listen to it again. The pace is dictated by them rather than the teacher in the classroom. And that's an incredibly positive outcome of this, that they can do that. There've been fewer distractions for some young people, and this links in with flexibility of time and place. So, you know, a learner can learn at a time and a place that is more suitable for them. So actually, they might have 5 minutes looking at some work, you know, and then 5 minutes running around the garden to get rid of a bit of energy, then come back and think about the work again. And they might not be tied to a desk. They don't have, you know, 25, 30 other pupils distracting them. The sensory overload is hopefully a lot less because they're in their own environment. Now, this isn't going to be the case for all our learners, you know, depending on their family environment, but actually we have found that this is also a benefit. Children can also access accessibility tools through the technology that they're using for learning as well, and I'm going to talk about that later on in this workshop. And the use of multimedia through technology really helps open up accessibility. So for children who are hearing impaired, you know, they can have a lot more visual input. For children who are visually impaired can have audio, children who need more sort of audio and text-based input. You know, there's much more flexibility here. And something I also heard a lot of was that actually for some teachers, they found when they were doing live lessons, and live lessons can be still very demanding, but live lessons in this kind of format, they'd ask questions via the chat, perhaps ask a question, give a bit of time to reflect on it, and then ask everybody to press enter at the same time for their question, their answer. And they found that children who wouldn't put their hand up in class actually were answering a lot more questions through this format because they felt more comfortable with this, because they weren't drawing attention to themselves by putting their hand up. And using technology can help us support confidence in answering questions a great deal as well. So all of these benefits have been really, really good. And I have to say, you know, up front, obviously every child with special needs and disabilities is different. They have their own needs, their own barriers to face, and their own adaptations we can address. But there are a number of things that we can do that will include a wider number of children in our lessons. And that's what this is all about. So I'd be interested to know, you know, if you found any of these benefits as well. And part of what I've been sort of thinking about over the last few years about how we include more children in our lessons is reflected by this framework, this universal design for learning. Now, I could spend a whole, you know, hour talking about this on its own, but the website is there for you to go and have a look at. And this is an American website. And sorry, I find it very hard if I can't hear myself. So you can go and have a look at this in a bit more detail, but really they've gone and had a look at the scientific evidence of how people learn and how we can be more inclusive and how we teach as a result of this. And it's reflected in kind of high quality teaching for all in this country, but it's quite a useful framework to look at. And ultimately, it investigates how providing multiple means of engagement, representation, action, and expression help us create more inclusive classrooms. So engagement is all about how we engage our children to learn, how we, you know, harness relevant contexts and the motivations of our children to make it more engaging. Representation is what we as teachers do. How do we present the information to young people in different ways? And action and expression is what the children do. What do they do in terms of the learning? How can they express themselves? And this research and this framework looks at how multiple means of all of these three things creates more inclusivity. So we'll reflect on this as we go through this today. So I've illustrated the next few slides with some tweets that I collected. It was a couple of months ago, really. Now, these are all from primary practitioners, but actually it's as relevant in secondary as well. But I thought it was nice to sort of see what people on the ground are doing. So number one, and this came up in the answer to my question earlier about what you're going to keep, utilising your learning platform for homework is really, really valuable. Obviously, it helps. It can help in terms of engagement and children understanding what they have to do and parents understanding what the children need to do. But also it opens up these possibilities for this multiple means of expression. So, for example, where previously you might have asked children to, you know, draw a picture or write down some answers to a question or do some research, actually children can then use technology to submit their homework easier than they could previously. So they could make an animation, they could do a comic strip, they could do a poster, they could record some audio. And actually for those children who find writing really, really difficult, it allows them to express themselves fully without that barrier of, oh, I have to write this down. So I know I've worked with children in the past who have fantastic ideas, some great inspiration for stories or for, you know, can talk about Egypt till the cows come home, but ask them to write it down and instantly it's a barrier to them expressing what they want to do. So using something like Google Classroom or Office 365 or Seesaw, whatever it is, just provides a few more opportunities for children to express themselves in different ways. And hopefully you can then, start building that into classwork as well. If you've got access to resources in class for children to answer a question by recording themselves rather than writing it down, it simply opens up more options and makes it more inclusive. It also provides the opportunity to model tasks, and we're going to come to that in a bit. And again, those assistive technology tools. I should know how to say that by now. So we'll come to those second 2 points in a moment. So in terms of modelling is really, really important for including all our children. So what are those key concepts in computing or any other topics that we're in and subjects we're teaching? And how can we model those? And actually, as a subject lead in primary, or obviously as a subject specialist in secondary, you can be making some short videos that can go on the website or on the learning platform. And this means that young people can access these at a time that's suitable for them. They can pause and practice, so they can pause it, they can go away and practice something and come back and work through it at their own pace. It also means that parents are more able to support their children because they understand actually what those key concepts are and how we teach them. So, things like an algorithm might be very, very new to teachers, to parents as well as children at the moment. And if they can watch a video on what an algorithm is or what repetition, sequence, selection are, then they're going to be much better placed to support their children with that learning as well. And again, this multiple means of representation, making a video, recording some audio, adding image support will help a greater range of children. So, I think it's really important that we can still do this. Workload is an issue, but once these videos are made, you can use these year on year, and they only need to be short. And this feeds into the next thing as well around pre-teaching and overlearning, really. So, I'm sure you are doing some fantastic work about pre-teaching already, but one of the big problems is, as a teacher, you can't be in more than one place at one time. But through the use of media, multimedia and learning platforms, then suddenly you can be. So a small intervention group working with a TA could be looking at a video that you have pre-recorded and discussing it and working through that. You can share your vocabulary lists, your knowledge organisers, any lesson notes on your learning platform for learners to access before a lesson. And it's definitely helped your learners, if they've come across vocabulary beforehand, then it reduces the cognitive load, the amount of working memory they're going to use in a lesson when they come across that term again. So if they've met that term, algorithm, selection, decomposition, whatever it is you're going to be using, and they have an idea of what that already is, when it comes up in the lesson, then they're going to be more able to take on board the learning. And obviously this will support any further isolating groups, but also long-term absence or any other absence. And we know that children with special needs and disabilities often have associated health difficulties, and they might have more absence than other pupils. And we can make sure that they have less impact on loss of learning if the learning is there on a learning platform to access. So as I'm going through this, it'd be really interesting to know if you've had any successes in any of these areas that you want to share as well. Please add them to the chat. And Pete, do let me know if any questions have come up on those first three things.
Sure. There's nothing in at the moment, Catherine, but I'll jump in if anything pops up.
Super, then I will carry on. Use of technology also opens up opportunities for scaffolding. And again, this can be problematic in different schools because of resourcing, and we know that schools don't have as many access to devices that they would perhaps wish to. But if you've got a couple of laptops in class, and I know a lot of schools have had a greater influx of that as a result of this time with DFE provided laptops or other schemes. But if you have access to a laptop in class that a child can use to work on a template, then this is going to really help with them. Now, obviously in computing, then hopefully you're going to be working with technology more often anyway, so these difficulties will be minimized. But providing digital templates really help children to adapt. The tweet here is less relevant, but I was thinking about OneNote, and actually OneNote is great for providing templates for learners to adapt and use. And I know in computing we have the use, modify, create framework that's really successful. So the idea is we are supporting students to work towards greater independence with what they're creating, but first of all they have to use content, they have to modify existing content, and that modifying step is a really important one for children and young people with SEND, because they can have guaranteed success in there. So rather than a blank piece of paper or a blank program, programming environment, if you give them a working program to modify, if you give them a template for a poster to modify, or even a bit of video to have a go at editing and work on, it will increase confidence and a greater degree of a success associated with that if they can have a go at that. And that is much easier when we're using a blended learning approach. And obviously, if we can provide digital content on a learning platform in a format that can be easily edited by children, then they can modify things like font size, colour of the background, line spacing to make it more accessible to them as well. So any of your young people with dyslexia, they might want to change the background to a pastel colour, or they might want to change the font to something more readable, or just simply increase the size. So all of these things will help with accessibility. And assessment and feedback is another area where this is really important. And, if we can use some of these tools within the classroom that we're starting to use a bit more. And I know that a lot of this is already in place in secondary, and we're getting there in primary schools as well. So providing feedback, instant feedback, working on guided practice. So I'm going to show you some of these tools as well, because I'm conscious you might not have seen them before, or you might already be using them, in which case, again, share your successes in the chat. So for things like, formative assessment, just some quick ideas of how children are getting on in the class helps us then with supporting our learners with special needs, and in fact, all learners. Providing spoken feedback, I'll come to. Guided practice, the whiteboard.fi tool is a fantastic free tool. And this is one of the best things I've seen for this. So actually what happens is you can create a new class really easily. You don't even need to log into this. There are some paid for tools that do a bit more, but actually you can do this for free. So you don't even need to add in your email, and I love this. And we can create a class with this. And essentially, you then have a link, or you can have a QR code that you can give to children, and everybody can be working on a whiteboard together. So it's really good for collaborative work, but also for some guided practice. So you can add an image on this, you can add some text for children to work on, you could add a bit of code, for example. I'm just conscious, I'm not on my normal computer, so I won't be able to do an example of this one, but I could add a bit of, and forgive me because I have not done any Python programming for Little World, but you can do some nice debugging things in here as well. So you could give them some work to modify, and then basically what you can do is push this out to all of the students so they can see what you see. And at the bottom, you can see the whiteboards of all the students who in your class. And as they're working on some program or problem that you've set, or this could be literacy and numeracy work, it doesn't have to be computing work, then you can see what they're doing and you can give instant feedback on what they're working on. You don't have to be walking around the whole class to do this. You can see this instantly. In the paid for version, you can give them feedback through this program as well, but actually you could just give some verbal feedback. So all of these things are really, really useful for supporting those learners who perhaps need a bit of extra support. And this can be done whether or not you're doing remote learning or in the classroom with everybody working on a computer. Other tools that can be used for this, Plickers is one of my favourite, and I particularly like Plickers because it only needs one device. So if you're doing some work, you know, any kind of questioning bit of work, you essentially print out a whole load of these QR codes, you ask a multiple choice question, and the children hold up the code. So if I go back to this, so the code here in the corner, you can see they're unique. So every child will get a separate code, and around the edges of the code, you have the letters A, B, C, and D. So if you ask a question with 4 answers, then the children decide what their answer is, and they hold up the code with that letter at the top. And what's lovely about this for learners with specific needs is, firstly, it's a bit more anonymous. So nobody else really knows what they're answering unless they have very, very keen eyesight. You can provide a bit more time here. You could do it in groups and do some peer assessment. I don't have time to go into peer assessment now, but if you know what that is, basically the groups can discuss it and come up with their answer, and helps children learn alongside that as well. So, but Plickers is really nice because you just simply need then one device, one smartphone or one iPad or tablet, and you scan all of the codes and it will give you feedback who's answered what. But it's anonymous then, so the children don't feel like there's that pressure of, oh, I don't really know what this is, so I'm not going to answer. So that's Plickers. It's really, really good and it's free. So definitely go and have a look at that. And you'll see in the corner here a class of children holding up their QR codes. Google Forms is a fantastic tool, and I think a lot of you, if you're using Google or you're using Microsoft, you'll be aware of these already. But there's a couple of things built into them that make them even more fantastic, or add-ins you can use. So Google Forms, there is an add-in called Just Mote, and I'll show you this website here. So Mote is a audio bit of feedback that you can add to Google Docs, to Google Classroom, to Google Slides, to Google Forms, and you can record audio through it. So you simply add it to Chrome, and then if I show you my Google form here, so this is a Google form I've been creating, and so I'm just trying to move things out of the way so I can access this. You'll see at the top there's a bit of audio feedback. I'll show you how this works. So if I ask a question, how are you today? There you go. There's one. I'll edit this. And at the bottom, I've got an option to add some audio feedback. And this makes Google Forms so much more accessible. So I click to record. How are you today? Option 1, happy. Option 2, sad. And I click done, and it will add it in here. And then when children come to do the test or the quiz, you'll see here at the top I have some audio feedback which I can play. You probably won't hear that because of all the audio settings, but you have it there. And so the children don't have to be able to read the question, they can hear it. And you can add lots and lots of audio in there, you can add image support, and it suddenly becomes a whole lot more accessible because you're not having to rely on the children being able to read 100%. And this is great for any learners with English as an additional language as well. So that was Mote, and you simply add it into Chrome and it will then be available for you in all of your Google Docs and Google Forms and Google applications. It's absolutely fantastic. If you're a Microsoft school and you create a Microsoft form, this is built in already, and this is called immersive reading. I'm going to talk about immersive reading in a bit more depth in a moment, but essentially for each question, to the right of it, you can see a little immersive reader icon. And if you click on that, it opens it up in Immersive Reader. And this is one of the most impressive bits of assistive technology I've come across in recent years, partly because it's built into Microsoft products across the board, and it's not an extra paid for thing, and it's fantastic for learners. So the first thing you can do is you can press play and you can listen to the text, and I'll show you the other bits and pieces of it when I come to that bit of the thing. But basically it means you can hear the text as well. The only slight issue with this is you have to go backwards and forwards between the Immersive Reader view and then the quiz in order to answer it, but it's better than nothing. So assessment tools, you know, are fantastic for finding out how children are getting on, but they've got some accessibility built into them now. Okay. So assistive technology, I wanted to show you some of these because these are fantastic. So if you can use some blended learning, use some of these tools in the classroom, support pupils to use these at home, actually it will make things much more accessible for them. And as I said, Immersive Reader is one of the best ones. I have recorded a little video about Immersive Reader on our website, and I'll show you the link for where to find that later on. So don't worry if I go through this a little bit quickly because I'm conscious of time. But you can find it in essentially 3 different places. So in Office 365, in Word Online, in OneNote, in PowerPoint, you have Immersive Reader. So here you have a Word document, and if I click on the View tab, you can see I have an option Immersive Reader. And you will see that this is what it looks like. So again, children can hear the text being read to them, and it will do it word by word and highlight the word as we go. So if I show you this, so I can hear that through my headphones and a child can listen to it. If I go into text preferences, you can change the text size, you can make it bigger or smaller. There's also a number of options around text spacing and font and background color. So actually blue might be a better background color. Actually, I might prefer Comic Sans to read it in. Grammar options, probably less useful in terms from a pupil point of view, but if you're doing any SPAG stuff in primary school, this is fantastic because you can highlight your verbs and your nouns in different colors. So if you had this on the whiteboard, it's fantastic for that. And then the last one, you can focus just in on a line, but the best bit here is there's a picture dictionary. So if I click on astronaut, I don't get a picture with that one. Let's see, space. There we go. So you can hear the word and you can see a picture image for it. So this is absolutely fantastic for learners who are, you know, struggling a little bit with reading. It just gives them an extra bit of support so they can hear it, they can see some image support. And if you have children with English as an additional language, you can also choose a language to translate this into. Let's go for Bulgarian, why not? So space, apparently. And they can then have it as a bilingual bit of text. So Immersive Reader is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't got Office 365 in your school, there are 2 other places you can find it. It's built into the Edge browser. So if you highlight some text and right click on it, you'll be able to have it there. So if you've got children doing some internet research, then they can access it. And you can also add it as a add-on in Chrome. So this is, I've suddenly realized I don't have it on this computer, but basically you could right click, you could highlight some text, right click, and you would have an option in here to help me read it. So essentially, if you just search for Immersive Reader add-on in Chrome, you can add it, and it works exactly the same way as it did in Word. So as I said, I've got a video for you to find out where to find those at the end. The other thing we have, how we do for time, is voice typing and dictation. So again, in Word, it's now built in the Home tab. You've got a little button that will dictate, so children can dictate their text. So if they're drafting out some work, they could actually speak it first of all and then neaten it up. And that will really, really speed things up for learners who struggle with the typing or with the writing. In Google Docs, you have the same. And this is in the Tools toolbar, but it's called voice typing rather than dictation. So I'll show you how that works. Click to speak. This is me dictating a sentence using the voice typing option, full stop, new paragraph. It has improved a huge amount since dictation tools started, full stop. So not 100%, but you can see this is an awful lot quicker for some students who normally really struggle with their typing or their writing. And so if you can allow children to use these tools within the classroom, it will increase the output no end. And if you can show them where to find these at home, then this will be really useful. So on this slide, you've got the links to all your Microsoft accessibility guides and Google accessibility features. And also on the iPad and on Android, anywhere where you use the keyboard, there is a dictate function. You often have to be connected to the internet to use this. There's also options for using subtitles in PowerPoint. If you're recording videos, then adding subtitles are really, really useful as well. I'm conscious we don't have subtitles going today, and it's just a feature of the GoToWebinar. I'm not sure we can do that, but in Zoom you can add captions in Google Meet, and that might be useful for accessibility for some of your young people as well. So time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share, or Tim, I don't know whether you can share that link with people that I shared before. There's a little Jamboard, and if you've not used Jamboard before, again, that's a free tool and really good for collaborative learning. So if you can go on that link and just pop a little sticky note, so the sticky notes on the left, and you might have put immersive reader or moat, whatever else, pop that on there and just tell me one thing you're going to try this term. And whilst you're doing that, there you go, I can see you all joining at the top. That's fantastic. So one thing, two things, if there's anything you do with technology and blended learning that works really well, so it might not be a tool, it might be an approach, then add it in there as well. Or you can just add it in the chat, that's fine. So whilst you're doing that and thinking about that, further support, this is the link where I said there was a short video about immersive reader and a few other things. So that top one. The EdTech Demonstrator Programme you might have come across. This is government funded. We're into the second year of it, and the first year was all about remote learning. This year it's much more about sort of school improvement through use of education technology. And there is free support for schools, so do go to this website and sign up for some free support. And I also came across a lovely blended learning course on Future Learn as well. Hopefully that's still running if you want to find a bit more about blended learning. Hopefully those are some useful tools. There's something there that you've picked up that you'll have an approach on. And basically, there we go, Whiteboard Fi. Yes, Whiteboard Fi is brilliant. I think it's really, really useful. And Plickers, perfect for me, because if you don't have a one-to-one, you know, every child has a device. Actually, you only need one device in the classroom. It's really, really good in terms of resourcing. So lovely to hear some of you are going to try those things. Okay, that is, oh, I had one more turning up there. Yeah, recording the voice in Word. And I think this is the thing, is that there's probably not a great deal here that I'm showing you that is brand new. It's just reminding you what's available. And every month, you know, Microsoft definitely are adding more and more things in. So do go and, you know, have a look at the Microsoft accessibility tools and the Google stuff. They're adding more and more. So yeah, immersive reading the picture dictionary, great. Thank you very much for your inputs on this, and any questions, do let me know.
Well, thank you, Catherine.
Oh, sorry, Tim. I just jumped in.
It's all right, Pete. I was going to hand over to you. I was just going to say thank you. We've already getting like comments in the questions window saying thank you. One comment in particular, really neat summary of some great resources to share with colleagues. You know, I always say that, you know, going away, you know, we might be familiar with all of this stuff, but going away is with some tips and tricks, no matter where you're at, is always a really useful thing. It is kind of what makes CAS tick, I think, a lot of the time is the way that we share. So Catherine, as always, brilliant. Thank you so much. Pete, are there any questions for Catherine?
Not so many questions, because I think most of those Catherine's answered, but I just wanted to read out some of the thank yous that have just come in, if that's okay. I think one really great statement here is about you know, a number of people saying they're definitely going to use more accessibility tools and keep it at the top of their mind, and I think that, you know, it's just keeping that up, you know, as a really important thing to bear in mind as we're developing resources. Thank you, really useful things to try. Fantastic session, thank you so much. I've seen so many resources I never heard of previously. So yeah, I think just a great combination of tips and tricks and the wider importance of thinking about accessibility. So I just wanted to share those with you, Catherine, but no specific questions at this time.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. Perfect.
Pete, can you do us a favour and grab some of these positive comments? As always, things we like to take the positive comments away. We also like to take your honest feedback. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you again to Catherine. Thanks to Pete for moderating and keeping an eye on the questions window. It's a great session. So with that in mind, at the end of this webinar, you will get a short survey. So all those lovely things that you've said in the comments and questions window, please say them again and rate us highly, or say something different, as long as it's positive. No, please do take a minute to complete the survey. It really it helps for us to do these things well and better, and your comments and feedback are much appreciated. So once we close this window and close this event, a recording of the webinar will be available on the CAS YouTube channel ASAP. I should say the handouts, if you haven't downloaded them, there's a presentation slides from today are available in the handouts tab, which you'll find in that lovely GoToWebinar dashboard. But this is it. This is the end of the CAS Virtual Showcase, everyone. And for those of you who have been able to attend multiple events over the last couple of weeks, we hope that you've enjoyed them. And we hope that you've taken away new things to take back to the classroom or for your own personal development. As always, we've still got lots of amazing online CAS community meetings to the end of the summer term. And please do take the time to attend as many as you can. We are still living in the online world, so you're having that benefit of being able to attend online meetings. So please do. But also a little hint: we've got a really fabulous program lined up for the autumn term, including lots of special guests and events. So I can't leak anything right now, but there will be more information of this very, very soon. I get into trouble. Anyway, that's us done for today and the virtual showcase. Thanks for joining us and supporting us over the last few weeks, and have a lovely rest of your day and weekend. Catherine, Peter, thank you, and everyone else, thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.